Thank you.
You guys aren't going to do this.
Do you have one of these? Y'all? All right, so it is 6:04. I'm going to call this meeting of the Citizens Climate Advisory Committee meeting to order on July 18th, 2022. Because we don't have quorum, we're not going to approve the agenda. We're just going to go ahead and proceed as it's written unless anybody has any modifications that they'd like to propose. Well, not formally propose, just suggest in a casual way. Nope. All right. So the next item on the agenda is to review the minutes and approve them all, but we don't unfortunately have quorum here in person, so that's going to get postponed. Either if we do have an in-person meeting in August, which would be the current cohort on the committee, or if not, then we'll look towards the September meeting, possibly having that be in person to get those minutes approved. The next item is a presentation on Alachua County's Empower program, and that being chosen by the U.S. DOE for their LEAP program for technical assistance. So Mariana Schmink, I think, has joined us virtually. Yes?
Yes.
All right. So Mariana,
Marianne.
Marianne, I'm so sorry. Yes, Marianne, welcome.
Close enough.
Sorry about mispronouncing your name. I wish I had like a bio or something to do. Does anybody do you want to introduce Marianne?
Yes, I can. Marianne is a very, very active member of NAACP Environmental Climate Justice Committee, and she has served with us there for the past 3 years. She has been the spirit leader on writing grants, and one of those grants is the empowerment program that we got through USDA, and it has a lot to do with making equity in our communities in terms of energy costs paid of the total income of communities. So we're in the process. Marianne is one of the leaders in terms of writing these grants, and she was very, very instrumental in us getting this grant. As she will explain, we are one of 24 grants that was given out across the United States, and we're the only one in Florida that got this grant. So again, it was about equity and about coming up with energy solutions. It's a technical grant that will help empower communities that spend a larger amount of their money on energy. As Marianne will explain, many of our communities, there's a big disparity between 5% income versus 25% of their income. So this grant is to try to come up with solutions that will allow these communities to become more efficient in the way that they use electricity and therefore spend less of their total income. And Marianne is also the president of Weatherization Coalition, and she has been doing energy audits in our communities for a very long time. And she's very familiar with energy and very familiar with making how weatherization affects the energy use in a home. So with all that said, as Mayor, I present to you, Marianne, a very, very dedicated person, very dedicated to this energy world.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you very much, Marianne, for being here and sharing this information with us.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, so John, thank you for that very generous introduction. I'm the president of the advisory board of the Community Weatherization Coalition. I'm also a founding member. We were founded in 2008. And so I've been we do volunteer energy audits in people's homes. So we do the sort of low level changing light bulbs, insulating pipes. And we also spend 2 to 4 hours talking with people about all the different ways they can save money on their utility bills. So that's what I do as part of the CWC. And CWC is one of the 2 community partners in this grant. The other partner being the NAACP Environmental Climate Justice Committee. So I'm happy to give you this overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions. You can stop me as I go along or wait until I'm done. So the NAACP ECJC committee has done several community forums over the past 5 years on energy, housing, food, and this was the most recent one in September of last year. On a countywide discussion on transitioning to 100% clean energy. And we had good participation in that forum, and including county staff, Sean McClendon, and other county staff people, Heather Langford, who was their sustainability person. We continued talking after the meeting about how to work together towards these goals of greater equity in the transition to clean energy in our community. We also, one of our speakers was Ennis Leon Jacobs, who's with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. He's the one who brought to our attention this grant from the Department of Energy, and we decided to go for it as an opportunity to work as a team to think about these problems and solutions. And we were delighted when we found out we were selected. So this is from the DOE webpage. They call it LEAP. We're trying to avoid talking about it as LEAP because of the confusion with the GRU LEAP program. So that's why we focus on calling it Empower. And this is their goals. It's specifically focused on low-income energy burdened communities that have either had a problem historically with the reliance on fossil fuels or other environmental justice issues. And so they are providing us with technical assistance over 12 to 18 months. There's no funding involved in this grant, but we are pretty sure that if we have a really solid plan, we will be able to find funding for it later. So these are the partners in our team: the NAACP group, Alachua County, the city of Gainesville, and GRU, and the CWC. And we are working as a team. As I said, GCRA is a part of that as well. These are the LEAP communities that were selected by the DOE. We're the only one in Florida, as you can see. If you go to their website and click on Alachua County, you can see a little summary about us. And this is basically to support community-driven action plans. And so we, the community partners, have taken the lead since the very beginning of this process. We're leading the discussion and we're leading the engagement with communities. And as I said, we're going to be working over 12 to 18 months. We're working most directly now in the planning phase over the summer with NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Colorado. We're still in the process of defining goals and writing a scope of work to help them define how they can best help us with technical assistance. But we're focused directly on equity and an equitable pathway, not just trying to get new technology, but really focusing on the communities that are most challenged economically. So this is our statement that's from their website. building on community goals for 100% renewable energy with a specific focus. This kind of restates what I've already said, but with an explicit focus on reducing inequitable energy burdens, as John said, and it also increasing resilience in low-income neighborhoods. These are the objectives that we defined in our proposal. We're looking for assistance to help us with our effort to launch a clean energy related economic development transition. The goal for Alachua County being 2030, for GRU being 2045, and with an explicit focus on equity by reducing inequitable energy burdens and increasing utility resilience. And we know that we can use some local funding sources that are available to us to do some of these things as we move forward. These are the 5 goals that we're focused on. And so this is really the meat of what we hope to do. Number 1, and these are in order of priority, except for number 5, which we hope to layer throughout. So the first priority is to reduce energy bills for residents through expanded energy efficiency and weatherization services. Members of this committee are probably aware that this is already happening through ARPA funds to GRU from the city and also from the county for a new pilot program that will focus on rentals in the county over the next 4 years or so. Secondly, we want to focus on developing a pathway for electrification, and particularly in these homes. So replacing inefficient appliances with electric appliances and making those electrical home electrical systems ready for weatherization and for eventually solar. We hope to, number 3, develop some solar projects in low-income neighborhoods. These neighborhoods are not very well represented in the solar, the homes in our community that have solar. It's a really small percentage that have been in these neighborhoods. So we would like to develop some solar projects with energy storage backup in a cluster on community centers, schools, and multifamily residences and nearby homes. And then look into the possibility of linking these arrays in a microgrid to help with resilience in climate disasters and for the long term in terms of climate change. And then, as I said, number 5, we'd like to incorporate a green jobs workforce development strategy throughout all of these stages. And so for that, we're reaching out to some other partners that aren't in the team, Santa Fe College and Career Source, and we're going to be working with some of the existing vocational training programs here. These were so the DOE defined exactly which communities were eligible for focus. These are the census tracts that, according to their indicators of environmental justice measures, and also high or severe energy burdens, were eligible in our community. So we, in the proposal, we defined Greater Duval, which is this area, also Swag, which is over here somewhere. And we have a third neighborhood, Spring Hill, which is, I think, in this block right here. Those are the neighborhoods where we're going to focus our work, where we have already support from the community organizations, and the need has been well defined. So what we mean by energy burden is this measure of household income, the energy bill divided by household income. So this is the measure that people use for talking about energy burden. And as John mentioned, these communities, it's maybe 4 times as high as the average for our community. They also have larger percentages of historically marginalized populations and communities of color. As I mentioned, they have a disproportionate lack of solar energy participation, Most of the homes, many of the homes are inefficient and older. They have not been upgraded because people can't afford to pay for expensive upgrades. They're twice as likely to have a utility disconnect. And there also have many other problems, including food insecurity and related health disparities and general economic disparities. I apologize, I've had a sinus infection for about a week, so I'm getting a little hoarse. And here are the data on the energy inequity in our community. This is from the report written by Hal Knowles and Lynn Jarrett in 2017 on transportation and housing inequities. And as you can see, the overall population pays about 5%. Low-income homes pay 4 times as much, over 4 times as much. And those can be a big proportion of the housing cost for those people. So this is what we're really targeting, is trying to make this disparity less. And you can see this is a map of the utility cost burden. So the red and orange are the highest levels of energy cost. And as I mentioned, we see weatherization as the first step toward being solar ready and climate ready, and trying to bring that burden down. So throughout this period, 2022 and 2023, we're going to engage with neighborhood groups and local government. That's why we're here talking to you right now, nonprofits and citizens, to build relationships and learn together and educate ourselves about energy issues. And we want to really listen to the residents about their own perspective about their community, their history, what has led to the problems that they face now, and how they would like for us to work with them to help to help the income challenged families and develop an equitable transition. That's our big goal. And as I mentioned, we don't have any funding from this project, but we are certain that we'll be able to develop some sound plans that will be eligible. I think having the DOE support is a huge boost for that. And in the meantime, what we can offer people immediately are the existing energy efficiency services that are already available through the CWC and through the GRU LEAP programs, and the expansion of these programs that I just mentioned through ARPA funding. I think that's it. Yep.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I'm going to turn it over for questions, either for folks here or our members who are online. You all want to jump in?
If you're online, raise your hand and we'll unmute you.
Oh,
To
okay.
the other, well, to the citizens. But
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'll open it up then, Miriam, and give everybody else a chance to think. What do you think is the biggest challenge for this program? Because it all sounds wonderful. I noticed you mentioned the lack of funding. Do you anticipate that being a challenge later on, or do you think that that's just that there are already grants to help fund the physical improvements that will come from the plans?
We feel pretty confident that there are funding sources out there, and also that the DOE is in fact planning to have more funding opportunities to support these programs that they're helping to develop. But we haven't started working on that as yet. I would mention that right at the moment, as I mentioned, we're just in the planning process. We're not exactly sure what we're going to be doing when, but we hope to have our plan more or less laid out by the end of the summer, and in the fall begin, particularly with the community engagement, which is the part I'm most involved with. There are a lot of challenges related to technology, adapting technology for these kinds of uses, and also the regulatory framework in the state of Florida, which limits the ability to do microgrids, for example. So these are all things that we'll need to address. All of it is challenging in that it hasn't been done, it hasn't been laid out. There is no green jobs pipeline. We'd like to see links from middle school and high school through a college and community college and to the university level, in which the trades that are already being offered and taught would have a more specific focus on energy efficiency as a career pathway. So those are all things that don't exist yet. We think there's a lot of potential, but many, many challenges.
Well, I think that I'm just very impressed by your focus. I mean, I think that the jobs pipeline is a really needed aspect of the project. I mean, I know that in the solar industry, they struggle to find workers who are trained. So being able to get, kids when they're in middle school or high school, exposing them that these sorts of career pathways is, a well-paying skilled trade, that this exists, and that it can, especially for folks who have an interest in energy efficiency, in, the environment, and taking a really, having sustainability be part of their career path, to show them that this is a way that doesn't necessarily involve a 4-year degree or an advanced degree. The way to serve their community and make a good living, I think is great.
Yeah, and with a focus on youth of color and Black-owned businesses, and so keeping that equity focus throughout.
Yeah. One other question I had was, you mentioned rentals and renters, and if you look at those energy burdened communities, I imagine a disproportionate number of them are renters. How do you? Maybe that's not true.
It depends on the neighborhood. Some neighborhoods, yes, the Swag neighborhood has a lot of rentals, but Greater Duval and Spring Hill are probably mostly, those are historically African-American communities. They have long-term residents there who just want to hang on to their homes. They want to avoid gentrification, but they haven't been able to bring their homes up to a level that they need to be.
Okay, got it. It seems like a lot of the energy efficiency programs are focused on homeowners. I mean, just because those are the folks who, if they make the improvements, they're the ones who will receive the benefit. Do you have any ideas on how to work with rental households, where the person who has to invest the money is not necessarily the person who's going to receive the benefit of energy efficiency?
Yes, I know quite a bit about this. So the CWC has always been, where we do services for anybody who pays a utility bill in the county. So half of our clients are renters. That's because we don't make major changes to the structure of homes or replace appliances. So light bulbs are something people can take with them, or shower heads. And most of our emphasis is on education. We spend a lot of time helping people understand their utility bill, what's on there and how that happens. But just this year with the new ARPA funding, just this year, the city has launched a new rental program. So last year they launched a new rental permitting program. This year they gave the CWC, the city, through the GCRA, a new contract to work with both homeowners and renters in the GCRA area. And they developed some guidelines for that, that include limitations on how quickly and how much rents can be raised by landlords following the benefits that they get from the program. So the renters have to be low-income people, and the landlords are constrained in their ability to pass on the benefits that they receive from the program through increased rents. The county is just launching a similar program now in the county outside of Gainesville city limits. And the pilot program for that's probably going to go to Rebuilding Together North Central Florida, which is CWC's partner fiscal sponsor and partner organization. So they have similar kinds of limitations for for landlords that must be low income renters, and there are limits on raising rents following the services. So that's where we stand right now. It's all very new. So everybody is evaluating how it's working and what the impacts are going to be.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to maybe add, I'm also a part of that committee for empowerment. And one of the things that's really happening, I think that makes this work very well is the partnership that we have formed with GRU and the county and the city to take advantage of the program. Another thing that I think is going to make this work a little bit better together is the fact that the regulatory environment is sort of changing with the utilities we have one pilot program. Well, it's an actual program that happened down in St. Petersburg where the microgrid is being used as a demand side management tool with TECO. And they've allowed the Public Service Commission has allowed them to actually use funds from the utility bill to pay for the microgrid, using it as a means for moving hot peaks off the grid. So that's starting, and I think if we can kind of use that as hurricane protection, hurricane resiliency, it becomes a demand side management tool, and it'll make it easier to get funding to get things done like a microgrid.
That's exciting. I hadn't heard about that. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Jennison, go for it.
Thank you, Marianne, and thank you, John, for that update. That kind of goes to the question I wanted to ask, maybe Marianne, but also any other members of the committee. So, Marianne, my question is about the second goal and moving toward electrification. And this may be too much in the weeds, but how is NREL specifically providing technical assistance? And how do you see that second goal addressing the larger climate action plan that our committee is tasked with putting together? Like, how can we help move that forward? So there's really two questions. One is about NREL and how they're providing technical assistance to move the supply side toward electrification, and then how can our climate advisory committee help through our climate action plan process with this Empower grant?
I'm hoping you can answer that second question, because I don't know how you can help us. We are committed to keeping you informed as we move forward, giving you regular updates about what we're doing, but how this is going to feed into other higher level planning processes, I don't have any idea. But we really think it's an opportunity to try to bring these things together because of the partnerships we've brought together in this team. We haven't yet talked with NREL specifically about that second goal. That's going to be a focus of a meeting on Monday with them. So I can't answer that question either. And it is an issue to the extent that GRU has not invested in electrification. They're still giving rebates for gas. And that has come up in our meetings, but the situation is very different now with the rising cost of gas. And so it's no longer a contradiction to be talking about electrification and about energy efficiency and economic and reducing economic costs. So we are also working, we just had a meeting today with a man named Joel Surface, who's with a company called InfiniBlaze, and he's been helping us find some of the resources that might come to bear on electrification, specifically not only, well, so GRU is about to roll out smart meters throughout our community, both water, gas, and electric, I guess. And so we see that as a tool that might be part of how we both work with communities when they're able to understand that those meters allow them to have a lot better understanding of their energy usage. And also Joel Surface was mentioning, there are now smart electric panels that have some energy management capability to them. So we know that some of these homes actually need to have their electrical panels upgraded. They're so old. So those are things that we're going to be exploring, but we haven't started doing that yet. And so John is really one of our best technical people on the team, and he may be able to add something there.
No, Marianne, I think you hit it. I've worked with the utility that implemented smart meters, and the key, it actually, we were able to measure that in residential, both residential and commercial, there was a tremendous drop, almost 15% drop in the average bill, as people started to know where and when they were using electricity. You are able with the smart meters, and there's also different features, and I'm not sure how much of these features GRU will use, but there are management features where you could set alarms to tell you when you went over a certain amount. So being able to track actions to energy use had really helped people feel more in control and were able to reduce their electric bill a lot. It also helped when a customer would call in to customer service, they were being able to be more specific and help them determine how they might be able to handle a high bill complaint.
So I think I took a detour from your question about electrification because smart meters are a different thing, but I think we are hoping that in the process of doing weatherization, we'll be identifying inefficient appliances that need to be replaced and trying to replace those with electric rather than burning fossil fuels. That's the shortest answer.
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful.
But, you know, if there's any, if you have any suggestions of how we can work more closely with this committee, what would be useful for you or ways that you think you might be able to help us, we're very eager to hear that.
One of the things I think I see as a common denominator, we talk quite a bit about community engagement here and how to do the same thing that we're talking about, how to let the community first be educated about climate change, and then secondly, to engage with them and find out what they want. And I think the surveys that we're doing now will kind of bring in some of that information that the county's doing. So we have a lot of that common denominator on that community engagement. Part of what our plans here at CCAC is to engage in the community and not only tell them how climate change will impact their lives, but also to hear what we're interested in. What are some of the problems that they see and how do they see some of the solutions? I think growing up in this energy world since 1980, I know that the way you do this directly is we can't impact the income. So the variable that we have to work with is efficiency, getting more for less. And so I think what we've always talked about is weatherization and improving homes. And we always talk about improving the envelope before you start to improve the equipment. So I think we're on the right track. I'm hoping what comes out of some of these our technical assistance is ways in which we can do that, engage. Things that I saw was engaging industry, engaging what we refer to as participating contractors that were involved with weatherization products, and actually having them become an agent and a salesperson for going into these communities and selling these products like the insulation, the window film, the high efficiency air conditioning. That moved it quite a bit along on different projects that I've worked with.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say, you know, and in our case, we're focusing targeting very specific, 3 very specific communities. So we'll be with that equity focus. And so we're talking about being able to learn from working at a community level. So not just weatherizing X number of homes in the community, but concentrating those in specific communities with specific histories and working with the community to learn about that as we do that.
And building on Marianne, on what you and John said, I think another place where I think this is more you helping us than us helping you perhaps, but you have the expertise in working with these communities, and equity is a big part of our plan for the climate action plan, a big component that's crucial. And so working in these communities, you have listened to them, had the opportunity to listen to them and hear from them what their challenges are. And you've also learned about what are effective ways to help the folks who are living there. So as we develop the climate action plan and are looking for strategies in terms of reducing energy demand in order to both reduce emissions as well as to help people to adapt, you know, as energy prices increase, as, you know, we have hotter days demanding, you know, more cooling. I would hope that we could turn to you and staff who put this together could turn to you all to gain from your expertise on what is a realistic expectation in terms of how much can we reduce the energy usage of some of these homes, and what are some of the most effective strategies to work with these communities in a way that is, you know, both respectful and put listening first, and also ensures that it's actually making a meaningful difference for them in the end. So I think that's where we might be coming to you all.
Yeah, you know, speaking from my own experience working with individuals in their homes, you know, they're focused on saving money on their bills, and that's very clear goal. And the CWC has done some pretty rigorous analysis. We save about 10%, and that's just with these low, you know, the light bulbs. And so but what we haven't tried to do yet is to make that broader connection to why saving your money on your bill is also reducing energy use and helping in this transition to clean energy, and why that's important. So it's those bigger issues that have not really been discussed in these communities very well. And that's what I think is the next level of where we want the conversation to go, but to do it in a way that really, as you say, respects their own history and their own point of view and works with them to learn with them.
Well, I think that's definitely something that CCAC could help with, is helping to make that connection and that education component, that outreach component that really shows that these are not two separate issues, right? That saving money on your electric bill and making your own life less burdened in terms of the cost of energy also, you know, works towards making the whole community more resilient and mitigates climate change. So
yeah, I mean, the tricky thing is to be able to do that in a language that people can relate to.
Yeah, don't say what I just said.
Or what I say. You know,
Yeah.
those are things where we, I mean, I'm a retired professor myself, and I've discovered the limits of my communication abilities. So these are things we're still learning about, but the NAACP has been pretty successful in our forums. So now we're trying to translate that into these community level, more focused interactions over a period of time.
Any other questions? No? Okay, Marianne, thank you so much. This was incredibly informative and helpful, and I am certain that we will be staying in touch.
Great, thank you so much. And John can keep you abreast of what we're up to. I'm happy to come back at any point once we have more to talk about.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Or
Thank
you're
you.
welcome to stay too, but you know.
No.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye. All right. Do we have any internal discussion before I move on?
No, I think that what Marianne said, moving to that next level of explaining how reducing your bill can also help the environment. But we have so much we can piggyback after, recycling, same thing. Economics, reducing your economics by the different sizes of trash cans you can use. Also with the energy efficiency. Energy efficiency model is similar to what we're doing. A new item that's coming up, a new word that's going to be coming up is decarbonization. And we're actually, I'm a member of Engineering Society, ASHRAE, and we're pushing the American Society of Heating and Air Conditioning Engineers. We're pushing that as a standard now. So like we have an energy efficiency standard,
Yeah.
there's going to be a standard for decarbonization. And the difference is we're looking at what all the carbon effect of the material you used, as well as the carbon effect of your operation of the building, and the carbon effect of how you dispose of the material.
Yeah, so it's like a
in the
life
building.
cycle embodied energy approach.
Yes.
Wow.
So I'm going to actually be talking to the school because we're doing schools. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at is two things. One is we're looking at a net energy, a net zero energy school design. And where the energy we generate from is going to be equal to the energy we use in the building. So it ends up being a net zero. So if we do solar, the amount of solar panels that we put in will equal the amount of energy we use through the meter.
Where is this actually going to be built?
There's 300 schools across the nation
Yeah.
right now. So there is designs, and what I'm presenting to the district is for one of our schools to actually have that as an option and compare that to a standard design.
Yeah.
And also looking at the fact of measuring the carbon effect of the material, the operation, and the disposal.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it will become a standard.
Yeah. Well, once you start getting the professional societies pushing that, then it just becomes integrated.
Yeah.
It's not the fringe idea, it becomes the standard.
ASHRAE's invested. I'm on the trustee board, and we just gave out they just started technical committees to look at this, and they just gave out over $800,000 to these technical committees to start to investigate how to write a standard around decarbonization.
Well,
Yeah.
keep us in the loop. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. And hopefully will be impactful.
Yeah, I think it's a total picture.
Yeah.
And if we can start from scratch and selecting the materials and having the materials to have a carbon label to them.
Yeah.
And then you can, it's kind of like, I guess, LEED in a way, but it's looking at CO2 impact
Yeah.
rather than energy impact.
Well, I mean, they are obviously
Yeah.
related, but I mean, that's important because at a certain point, sometimes it makes sense to buy the new, more efficient appliance or piece of equipment, but sometimes it doesn't. And it takes actually looking at that whole, and I call it embodied energy or embodied carbon to really understand where we need to be moving. Because something that may be the most efficient on energy, if it requires, materials that are very energy intensive or carbon intensive to mine and to manufacture, that actually might not be the best long-term solution. And
Exactly. And that's how we distinguish between the carbon evaluation versus, say, the the energy evaluation.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, maybe you could answer this too, John. I meant to ask Marianne about this, but I'm thinking about the importance of transportation in this whole equation of the energy burden, as well as reducing greenhouse gas emissions and decarbonization. And so, are you aware of, or I guess the question is like, how do we as a committee, as well as through the Empower project and through your work with NAACP and others, how do we also couple the work focused on buildings and homes with the transportation element? So not just private vehicles, and helping move to electrification of private vehicles that become essentially part of people's homes. Like, how can we help address equity by assisting with that transition to electrification in vehicles, I guess is what I'm thinking about, because they need to go hand in hand, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting enough, the gentleman that Marianne mentioned that came to our meeting, there's a college campus in South Florida that is working on putting together electric transportation within that college campus, and making and tying that in to their grid. So again, one of the really good things that I see out of this committee that we're working with is that GRU is there. We can't do anything without the utility.
Yeah.
And that campus I'm talking about, Florida Power and Light came in and built basically a substation that allowed them to charge up their electric vehicles. And similar to a lot of programs that we have with golf courses, where we put them on a time of use rate, where we put them, they charge up at a low cost period. And it makes a lot of sense. They can do it off peak.
Yeah.
And if they do it off peak, they get the off peak rate. And they've done that with this particular college campus. And that has helped them be able to cost justify a lot of their electrical vehicles.
Which campus was this?
That they did it at Berry. And what else? Oh, Florida Memorial College also. And I know that I talk about FPNL because that's where I worked at, but they have a golf course program also that's similar and putting it on an off-peak rate.
It'd be interesting. I mean, I know UF is working on their cap. Be interesting if that vehicle electrification, I imagine, is part of it, whether they are aware of those programs or whether they've talked to, I think Duke is still their provider, talked to Duke about.
Yeah. I'm sure Duke is large enough as opposed to GRU that has a longer on-peak, off-peak rate.
Yeah.
GRU just doesn't have that differential.
Yeah. Interesting to talk to them. Anybody else? Any thoughts before we move on?
There's a hand from Gil now. She's
Oh, yeah.
Public Works.
Gail, I see your hand up. We're going to unmute you if you want to jump in.
Hey, sorry, that was completely accidental.
Okay.
I don't know how that happened. I'm just listening in. Thank you, though.
Okay, no worries. All right, well, seeing that, I mean, I don't see any other questions or comments on the committee and none in the public. We will move on to the fifth item on the agenda, which is discussion of the climate action plan outline and other initiatives by Stephen. And you sent out some information last week? Last week. Okay, on this. So hopefully we've all had a chance to review that and you won't be telling us anything brand new. We'll just have good questions.
Okay, and before I go on to that, I do think that this DOE program is gonna give us some insight.
Empower, yeah.
Yeah, powered on communicating with the public. I
Yeah.
think it's one of those key components that we're looking for to figure out how to communicate the message better
Yep,
than what we've been doing. I have this in my updates coming up, but we still need a lot more information from the surveys. And we're continuing to try to push that out. I don't have any update on that yet in terms of the results, but I think the next step is learning from this program and others to integrate into the community, how to best communicate what we're trying to accomplish. So I know we're going to be participating quite a bit as staff in this program and trying to get as much information as we can. Our equity officer is one of the main players associated with DEDRA. Yeah.
I just want to add one good thing about the survey, I think,
Yeah.
that's going to turn out to be very, when we talk about different segments of customers or different segments of citizens, what's important to one segment might not be important to the other. So I think being able to find out where those answers came from or where it tells us what's important to one segment versus what's important to another segment.
yeah. There's been some, I think it's Yale does the 6 Americas survey where they look at people's views on climate change and it breaks down into, from like the apocalypse is happening now to it's not real and everything in between, but they basically break it down into 6 segments based on how people are thinking about climate change, how concerned they are, how they think it impacts them. And there's I've seen also other research on, you look at like, political affiliation, but issues, but really how it goes to people's values. Like ultimately it comes down to what people value and being able to then communicate based on people's concerns and their values about these issues. You get a lot more traction and you actually get a lot more agreement when people are more open because you're kind of speaking their language.
I don't want to take a lot of time, but one of the things that really shocked me, working with the school board, we had a session with our custodians, right?
Yeah.
And we were trying to get our custodians not to, when we clean floors and we wax floors, not to pour the wax stuff down into the outside drains.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we did is we actually had the county to come in and talk to them about how water flows. And then it got down to, we love to fish and it ends up in our lakes.
Yeah.
And it's not good because we're going to destroy our lakes and our fish.
Yeah.
So that was related to what a lot of the people actually did.
Yeah.
And once they understood how water flows through the county, they could understand that, hey, this is why we don't do that.
Yeah.
So I think being able to relate it to a personal basis.
Yeah.
And we all live in the environment, and so the environment impacts all of us. So I think being able to attach that environmental connection to an activity
Yeah.
is the way you kind of do it.
Yeah. Something that actually touches a person personally in their life.
Right.
Okay, so I can maybe ask you all how you want me to proceed with this. I have the 2 documents I sent out. We can
Yep.
pull those up and kind of go through them. For those public that are watching, the 2 documents, one is an outline for the climate action plan, which actually has existed for quite some time. It's kind of a tool that staff use to make sure we're covering all the areas that we want to see within the plan. We're not typically aren't putting all our information into that outline. It's something that we go back to and check, hey, are we dealing with that, or is there something more we can deal with? The other one was what Megan, you put this together. It's kind of a response to the questionnaire that the CCAC put out to staff to figure out what we're doing in both the city and the county. And Megan was gracious enough to pull that all together and explain why we needed it. So we have both of those documents. Megan, you may actually be able to explain the one document even better than I could. But I can start with the climate action plan. I can go ahead and pull that up. What I'm trying to figure out, I probably need to share my screen.
Yeah.
For the citizens to be able to see this. Really slow. There we go. So while it's pulling up, I have gone in and I've gone back over the outline that we've had in place for a while. And Amanda, your information is integrated in there in its totality. I did not want to break it apart. I want it left there to make it very clear how I would kind of go through the waste items in that because it's a little different with the way staff had written the outline, so I didn't want to break it up and mess up that flow. So see if I've got a couple of steps I'm going to do. Screen. So Jennison, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so this is the outline. It's pretty much the same. It's looked for a while. It's got the vision and guiding principles laid out. We trying to cover all of those key concepts in this section. So what we would do when we're ready to develop the climate action plan, which will probably be a web-based function, we will integrate these components into it. Then there's kind of what we call the functional data. This is that baseline, what we're trying to accomplish through our emissions and our goals and our targets. That kind of lays out, for instance, reducing of 80% levels to, that's an example actually, but yeah, 80% levels by 2050. And so it kind of lays those out, and then it identifies the emission sectors. This is, for instance, what we were just talking about, energy, what our strategies are related to energy, transportation. We target a primary county and primary city staff person, and then we integrate other experts. Those names have changed over time too, so we keep pulling people on and back off again, depending on whether they're still, participating or not. We have transportation, built environment, and at any point you want to stop or go back, we can do that too. Waste, which Amanda has been gracious enough to contribute quite a bit to. So this is one of our larger documents. Gus Olmos with the county did a lot of the input, as well as Michael and Tom. Tom's couldn't make it this afternoon. So the original one's kind of what the city and county put together. And then Amanda's additional information is also included in its totality too. So that as we develop the actual climate action plan language on the waste, we don't lose this information that's been put in the outline. As you can see, a lot of information has been integrated into that section. Oh, I do want to mention, we try to reference critical documents as well, so we don't forget to go back to those. when we get a chance. The next section is the vulnerability assessment. This is the findings from the vulnerability report that's underway, as well as the floodwise vulnerability analysis that were done with both the city and the county. So we have that information as well. It tends to be a little bit more compact and focused on flooding, but those have been really good informational items as well for staff. Then we've got green infrastructure, carbon sequestration, and this is where we talk about resource protection, wetland protection. Me and Forrest, as you recall, Forrest is now in the city. Forrest is currently one of the contact people. And Jennison, if you notice, we've got UF Crack on there, just because from the start we felt that group would be a critical role in developing of this information. There's some examples from other places just to keep us focused on that. Acquire and manage lands for greater carbon, that's our land acquisition programs and easement programs. Protection of soil, this one wasn't originally in here when I looked a couple months ago and realized it's something we need to get in here focused more on. Food security, water and water supply are all really critical components. Food shed resiliency is Sean McClendon, who's part of the team that the presentation we just talked about. He's leading a lot of those issues, or water conservation and water quality protection. GRU has been heavily involved with that, and Stacey Greco, our water resources program manager. Equity is something we're trying to integrate throughout all of the process. And then the human, mental, and physical health aspect, we also added that in. That wasn't specifically targeted, but now that we're integrating in our community support services and our health team, we're going to start integrating more information about the impacts on human health, especially mental health. Tracking weather-related trends. And then accountability, reoccurring cap. So that brings up our final sections on communication, public engagement. We're hoping to learn something this summer on how that's doing. And I've not changed anything here. The CCAC has actually created a draft communication plan, and so that'll be something I think we probably all need to come back and look at again and see where we are on that and what our next steps could be. This was pretty fleshed out, mostly by, I think might have been you all. I think the CCAC provided a lot of this information when the communications sub-team got together and had some suggestions on how to put this work together. And then this is, I think, where we end, just continue collaboration, and then the literature review, which identifies some specific action items, and so forth. So that's what the outline looks like. It's pretty similar. We can stop and talk about that a little bit, or we can, it's up to you all. We can move to the other document.
I had one question. I think you already answered it, but just to be totally clear, the proposal is not, or what you all are proposing is not to make this like a written document in this format. This is just kind of more of a way of maintaining the framework and making sure that all the information that you want is in one place as a working document.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the concept would be that all these areas would be accessible on a dashboard.
Okay.
And so citizens, staff, policymakers would be able to target what they're trying to find.
Yeah.
And it might be somewhat organized with this type of information, but it would be more of a visual format where you would say, what is happening with what are we doing about mental health? And so you can click on that and say, here's what's available, resources to assist with mental health issues. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we hope to be doing. So it's kind of it's not going to be a paper document.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just wanted to I noticed at the bottom where it's, prioritized by cost, feasibility, degree of impact. I mean, that was what we had talked about in the sort of the framework for the cap that we presented to the Joint Policy Board. And one of the suggestions was to do this as essentially have it be web-based or web accessible, but also as essentially an organized database where sort of action items or policies or programs are tagged with attributes that relate to cost, that relate to the various sectors that are impacted, that relate to, how, the degree of impact, that sort of thing, so that folks could not just, so that you could actually organize, you could query this database and say, I want, all of the mitigation, action items that relate to transportation or that relate to energy use by residential homes, and if you pull that up, say energy use by residential homes or energy use, then you'll be able to see like the Empower program should pop up under that. But so that it's more interactive for not just residents, but also other people in the community, organization leaders, business leaders, staff and policymakers. So, yeah, paper documents never get used, so I'm glad that you all are staying away from that.
Yeah, I think, and that's probably why this is a little bit more filled in, because it's just gonna, it's gonna sit.
Yeah,
And so it's probably gonna come down to who we end up utilizing, the format they use for the web design. But I'm hoping it has those types of search engines that you described, that you can actually find information, multiple different approaches to.
you can ask for that. It would not be that complicated. It would literally be like a database on the back end and then, a filter sort of query function on the front. It should not be, the work would be on for filling in the database. That's the work, not the programming.
I have a question. Will there be a dashboard per section or just one in totality covering all the sections? I've been talking to Gus for a while about one related to zero waste, like showing what we recycle, recycling rate, diversion rate, a lot of those metrics. And hopefully over the 10 to 20 years, we're working towards zero waste. Those metrics will change in our favor. So it could be that there could be a combined one if the county and city were planning to do it per kind of category or subject matter.
So, I was on my next item, the update, we did have a joint water and climate policy board, and the city and the county the direction I heard on Monday, on the 11th, was that they're gonna work together toward developing the website, either contracting it with an outside contractor to build it or internally. What I envision is, you would click on that zero waste, and it would take you to all that information you just described. So it may pull you off the site temporarily to get you all that information, and then you can get back. But I could, or that site could also be available through another web link as well.
Okay.
But my hope is that that climate action plan is sending you to all that information, because I would hate to have all that information available and not have it linked
Yeah.
to the climate action plan. So that's definitely something.
Yeah,
hope we
and I told
accomplish.
Gus I'd help them design that with their education people. So it should
Great.
just go ahead and be something jointly with this as well.
It sounds like, that could be one of the first ones that
Mhm.
is ready to run.
Yeah, because we have all of those data. I mean, I look at it all the time. So it's out there and we can expand it if we get more or if we need something else. So I think that would be a pretty easy one to put together.
That'd actually be a great beta
It would.
to see like, you have the data, so you can figure out, oh, we need to add this capability, or we need, this organizational
Features,
structure,
yeah.
feature, yeah.
Yeah, I think, once we decide on who our web designer is gonna be, there's gonna be at least a 3 to 6 month window of how that's gonna get designed and what kind of information they want.
Mhm.
And then hopefully within that year, it goes live to the public and everyone will get it. I think that's kind of the hope. So it's probably a 2024
Mhm.
opportunity, but, based on what we just heard last Monday, I think we should be getting direction very soon from our policymakers to figure out what our next move is going to be for the website.
Okay, great.
And any other questions about the outline?
Any questions on the folks who are on Zoom? I think shaking heads. Specifically, I'm seeing Jennison.
I think, we have, if there's no, committee members, we do have a citizen who's raised their hand.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
Alan?
I wonder, I mean, it's an awesome document. I'm kind of blown away. Wondering if you would like, as a citizens committee, some input from some other citizens groups, just to take a look, comment. You can, I could offer League of Women Voters, Natural Resources Committee, and a new group that I want to bring up under new business later.
Steve, I'm gonna leave that to you because it's kind of a staff document.
Right, it is a staff, I wouldn't call it a final document in any form, but we would love any input, in general, that would help, especially if it's something you feel like we're somewhat missing or lack, some information. So Ellen, I can get with you and we can talk about that.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm particularly thinking of the League of Women Voters and our group with Roberta and Jay. They're really on this stuff, and maybe they'll have some things to comment to you. Obviously, an NDA is understood.
Thank you, Ellen.
Welcome.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
I was just going to add a thought that would be related to how this dashboard and website, how the action plan is created as a living document. And that's kind of the who taking the organizational chart. So like the information that's listed in each section, and who on the committee and the liaisons with the counties, cities, and then community leaders in those areas. I think it would be super helpful to have a component of that dashboard that's dedicated to just the people, and who's involved, and see who's connected and that history. We know the years, so just a suggestion, or something I wanted to throw out there, that we think carefully about that, because that could be used also as a mechanism to engage citizens like Ellen who who want to help with this, and kind of establish that community liaison role or roles for each of the focus areas of the climate action plan.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, both for the reason that you mentioned of kind of identifying a point of contact, and also just humanizing the effort. Like, these are actual people, members of your community, who are working on this, and who have ideas and welcome ideas, and that it's a living document.
I agree.
I agree too. I wrote that down. I think, recognizing all that are contributing and assisting and finding, I think it's going to just lead to more people wanting to be engaged in the process.
Thank you, Jennison.
All right, with that, I can move on to the other documents.
Sure. It doesn't like running Zoom
No,
and anything else.
I think I have to do it in 2 steps.
I apologize for not doing a break. There is a clock in this room that has been saying 6:35 for a while. And I'm like, man, this seems like we've been going for more than 35 minutes. And I look down, it's like 7:15. So the clock lies, and I'm sorry for anybody who wanted a break and didn't get one.
Good.
We're good. All right. And this hasn't changed, right? You all haven't added to this?
The only thing I did do is I went through it and a few things have gone from will do to doing.
Oh, okay. All right.
Jennison, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Enlarge it a little bit.
Is there something, so I think I've presented this before. Is there anything specific that you wanted me to talk about? I mean, my idea for this is that this is also a living document, by the way, is that, it's looked at maybe once a year, so.
I'm still seeing the outline,
Uh-oh.
Steve.
Oh. Okay, hold
I
on.
think you need to switch your option.
Thanks. New one? Okay.
You good? Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, so we've talked about this one before, but the idea here is really just to understand kind of where we are, what we as a community are already doing, and then also it gives us an idea of what levers we have to pull that are already in existence. So policies or programs that we could revise, build upon, expand, and also just kind of getting the lay of the land. So that was the whole purpose behind this document.
The one thing I want to point out is that it somewhat kind of identifies what was in the outline, but then provides the information as to what we're doing and what we're not doing,
Yep.
what we should be doing. So on the column on the left, you know how people can see that, but it lays out in categories and then identifies what the city, what the county, what you are doing
Yeah.
to do that. So if you want, Megan, I can just scroll down,
Sure, yeah.
show what we need.
I mean, I think this format is not as easy to use for gap analysis as the graphic format. I mean, I did one segment as an example. I think I did temperatures as an example, showing sort of like using results, using the feedback from that survey and putting it in graphical format, I think is easier to see where we have gaps than in this format, but this format obviously allows for a lot more detail about each item.
So that example was provided to the Joint Water Climate
Yep.
Policy Board. I think they like the visual aspect of it as well. And the concept is that kind of visualization is going to be something integrated into the climate action plan
Yeah.
dashboard. But this is helpful to see if you want to know what are we doing, what are we hoping to do, and what are we not doing. It's really a helpful tool. And I think this one is actually probably more comprehensive than the outline is in terms of describing what's happening.
I think this is more comprehensive in showing what we are doing, and the other one is a better representation of what we're not doing. So this shows, yeah, the other one, the graphical or visual representation, I think better identifies the gaps, whereas this better identifies existing and upcoming action with specificity and identifying, what is the name of the project, and hopefully like who I've tried to put in parentheses, which department is overseeing that program. So we're able to really locate it within the sort of jurisdictional organization.
And for instance, here's an example in energy initiatives. I added the DOE.
Yep.
The project. And again, that's not just Alachua County, but I wanted to just get it in there.
Yeah.
So there is a couple places where staff's gone in and added a little bit here and there.
Great, yeah.
But I'm just scrolling through for those that are, maybe seeing this document for the first time to kind of understand what this document looks like. It's just another one of our tools that we're going to be using to integrate the climate action plan when we pull it all together. And again, thanks to the CCAC for. And a lot of this also pulls into the responses we got from each of the CCAC members as well. When we sent out the survey to staff, and I believe it was late 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you all are using it. I'm really glad you're using it.
So it's actually quite long, but it has a lot of good information. I'm sure there's a lot that are that we don't even have in here too, then when we get more of the team integrated into these next steps, okay, how are we gonna then show and talk about transportation, for instance? I think we'll get even more participation from the players, and this will be a good starting point for them. I can go through it all, or we can.
Does anyone want to keep going? I think you're at the end, actually, or you're very
Okay.
close to the end.
Yeah, you're right, because then it gets into, I know this is hard to look at when it's rolling. Yeah, there's back,
Yeah, that's basically the methodology section. Or the justification methodology. Try to put everything in one document.
and there's a lot of good information in this section.
So that's basically, this is a Word document form of the qualitative vulnerability assessment. So looking at those 4 anticipated impacts, and then from each of those thinking, how is this going to impact our local community? So how we live, work, play, move. So those are really the 4 that the climate science indicates have a high or medium to high probability of impacting us here. I mean, sea level rise is not a direct impact, that's an indirect impact. In terms of in-migration from the coast is probably going to be the largest component of that for us. So just needing to serve more people in our community. Then the others are more direct impacts.
Might have some questions.
Oh, I just saw Ellen's comment in the Q&A about UF being conspicuously absent in this list of initiatives. And it was a while ago that we started putting this together and fleshed this out. And I know we talked about that, like how do we include UF, Santa Fe College, or other institution-led initiatives in this. And
Yeah.
did we make I don't recall if we made a explicit decision to leave them out or have them captured under. Yeah, I'm not sure.
We want them included. This was just the 3 respondents for whom we have official liaisons. So that's why this is just city, county, and GRU. But I think the plan has always been to get input from UF, from Santa Fe, and then any other like large organizations in the city that might have insight in their own programs that they're running, or insight into anything that we might be missing.
And it doesn't include the smaller cities as well.
Yep.
So
this was targeted just to.
yes.
So this was targeted specifically to Alachua County, City of Gainesville, and GRU staff to identify ongoing initiatives. And that's to Ellen's question. So it's not intended to be comprehensive.
Not yet.
Not yet. It's a great starting point, though.
Okay, these questions will be captured in the in the meeting minutes. So we'll have all these questions available for the future as well.
Yeah, sounds good. And yes, to the question about like community groups, yeah, I mean, I think the more input we can get, the better. We're really trying, the idea here is to capture, I mean, when I call it the lay of the land, and that's what how I consider it, anything relevant that is happening now is both something that we're already doing as well as an opportunity to grow that, call it a lever of change, but to grow that policy or that program or that action to be broader or more effective or more targeted in the future. It's just letting us know what we're working with. So yeah, more input is better.
And I think more input will also bring people in and feeling, both organizations and individuals, that it's their plan.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can get involvement in the community and organizations that have really already done some community outreach work, I think would help quite a bit.
And to your point about the community groups, I mean, an opportunity by getting additional information from community groups is finding these points where maybe we didn't see the overlap or the opportunity for collaboration between an existing, staff initiative and a community initiative where there's, a neighborhood group or a local organization that says, hey, we're doing this. And we're like, actually, you need to talk to so-and-so. And there's this opportunity that we didn't know existed. And we only can find out about it because we're asking these questions and then organizing it in a way that lets us see it.
I think the component on food has a lot of interface with other things that have been, we have a food consolidation group that's been really talking about climate change and food by reducing transportation and growing local, and then the health aspect of it also. I think as we get into these different groups and find out things that they're doing, we can find a lot of links that we didn't make, as you just said.
Yeah, well, and it could be opportunities where it's something where maybe the city or the county is not aware that that's happening, but it's something that they can support, that they have the room to throw support behind.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like food was one of the ones where I don't think that we really had a lot of official programs in that, but there is all of this community action already happening.
Right.
Yeah, I think up to this point, we pulled this information together, but I think the big next step is to get the community engagement and use strategies like the grant program we just got and climate summit and things like that to pull the community and get the input. And I think that's really this coming year, I can envision that as one of the major pushes of this committee and the county staff and getting the input we need to push us to finally getting that climate action plan together.
I think with the climate summit, but part of gathering information from the groups is not just saying, what are you doing, but then following up with, and what is working well and what is not working well, and being able to learn from their other people's experience, so that we can, make it better. We can make improvements going forward, and really, like, you don't want to make the same mistake twice, right? And if a community group can say, hey, we're doing this and we tried it this way and it didn't work, so don't even bother, this was really successful, then we can just leapfrog to that successful strategy as long as we're willing to listen to what our community members are saying.
Right.
I think that's all I have on this one. I've got quite a few updates that we can go to in the next item number 6.
Well, if we don't, does anybody have anything more on this? Otherwise, I'll just throw it to you for 6.
Okay.
No?
So we had the joint water climate policy board meeting on Monday, and I gave a presentation there that utilizing a lot of Megan's information originally to give them an update on where we were. And coming out of that, that's the first time we talked about the concept of a climate summit this spring, hopefully tied with information we're getting from the vulnerability analysis. We were probably going to have new city commissioners and possibly county commissioners. So it's a good opportunity to educate our new policymakers that are just coming on board. So the idea would be probably April, May, somewhere in that area, a climate summit. And I feel like that would be something this group would help kind of spearhead in terms of, what kind of scale it would be, who we would invite. I've had preliminary discussions with Matt Williams at UF, and they want to be engaged and be part of this summit. And I think it might be maybe the first time publicly we could integrate, this climate action plan ideas and concepts with what UF is doing and show that there is some synergy with what we're trying to accomplish. So I think there's a really good opportunity there. And so I gave that presentation, brought that up at the end, and the board member's suggestion was integrating schools. That's not something we've done much. I know you've talked about it quite a bit, but integrating educational opportunities about climate into the schools and the students, and then collaborating with the small cities. And I think something like the summit might give them an opportunity to actually hear what we're trying to accomplish countywide. And then, just more engagement with the community at this, now the next kind of bringing the community in. So those were there, in my notes, those were their 3 suggestions. Moving forward was community schools and the small city engagement.
So on the summit, is this meant more for like a working committee or a working group of staff and elected leaders, or is this something where it's more about community outreach and engagement? Is this like,
I was envisioning something kind of maybe both, but possibly having different goals for different days. I was imagining like a 2-day summit, probably the beginning, bringing in experts that can explain to the community what we're experiencing, what we could be experiencing. And then maybe a half a day that's targeted to the policymakers. So they get educated on, what they should know and what it means to them and how it's affecting the economy and programming. And then another day that integrates opportunities for the public to get educated as well. So, I mean, it's open, we've got a lot of flexibility on what we want to do. We can scale it to whatever we think would work best. So that would be something, maybe the next 2 or 3 CCAC meetings, talking about that, maybe bringing in UF representatives too, to talk about what they would envision this could work for, because I can see that being a critical part of their goal to get their action plan information out too. Maybe that's one of the next meetings we can do is ask the UF representatives that have to do in their climate action plan, how they see this working for them as well.
and my suggestion would be to have the educating elected leaders is a great idea, but also give them an opportunity to talk and meet each other. Because if, we haven't had like the smaller cities involved. So bringing them kind of into the group and letting them meet the people who are involved on this side, and then have an opportunity to be heard. Like, what are you guys concerned about? What is most relevant for your community? I mean, to John's point earlier, speaking to them about something that's important in their life, that's important to their particular community, so that kind of builds and grows going forward. So not just like pushing information out, but having an opportunity to be able to bring it in to help grow the process too.
Almost hearing local stories and how what's happening locally and how they've been impacted, and something that the community can wrap their head around and understand. Yeah, that's happening to me too.
Yeah.
So let's see. We heard a presentation from Causal, and It's a company out of Finland that does website design for climate action plan. They're relatively new. But the comments we got from them is they can integrate both county and city teams. And so it may be an option for us to look at. There's an upfront cost and a monthly charge, which weren't very much. And so we're gonna do some homework and learn a little bit more about that organization, but that was an example of an outside entity that can take the data we have and create that dashboard-like concept for us to utilize. So if you're interested and you hadn't seen that, if you watch the Joint Water and Policy Board meeting, Climate Policy Board, you'll be able to hear that presentation at the beginning. So that'll be one of our next big steps is deciding on how we're gonna move forward with that. The website. We did have elections. So we have, in fact, we have two new members. Betsy Riley, who's here in person, and Carly Moore, who's online. And then Jennison got reelected for a 2-year term. So Jennison, I don't know if you caught that, but you got the 2-year term. And then Jackie Davis is our third 3-year term member. So 3 new 3-year terms, which is the typical length. And we had a vacancy this past year. So they gave Jennison the 2-year term. So you're probably happy on the full 6-year commitment.
Well, welcome to all of our new members. And thank you for joining us here and kind of seeing how it's done. And Jennison, thanks for sticking around.
The only other updates I have is I don't have an update on the survey. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have the data back and we're still trying to push it out. In fact, we gave that information out again at the Joint Water and Climate Policy Board to try to get more. We put it out in Spanish, so we're doing what we can to get that information out. So I think I sent it to all of you too. If you have other organizations, and I think Mary Ann, she's not on anymore. She sent it out to her distribution list, which is about 400 people. So that hopefully that gets some traction.
Yeah, I've gotten it a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
but are we getting it in different are we looking at what's coming in and seeing, are we coming in from one area versus another?
I don't have that data yet.
Okay,
Yep, don't have it.
I don't know, was there areas that we weren't getting?
Yeah, that'll be something because we did ask.
I think what John's trying to ask is are all of the responses coming from the choir?
And I just don't know. the
Okay.
answer. Yeah. Hopefully not. The other thing is the Florida resiliency grants that helped us pay for the vulnerability analysis work. It's up again for this coming year, and the due date to get it in is September 1st. So I'm open to hearing suggestions. I had 3 ideas moving forward. One was to possibly pay for a climate summit and other outreach efforts for the year, kind of put that together as one option. One would be to maybe look at our protection of our agricultural soils and strategies there. So it would almost be like a follow-up analysis going beyond what the current vulnerability analysis is going to do, but much more focused in component on agricultural lands and looking at protecting, food security and ag protection locally. That might be another possibility to fund that. And then the other one would be a possibility of a web design, funding a web design for the climate action plan. So those were 3 concepts we're talking about internally now, but if anyone has any other suggestions, let us know. I am sure there's others, but I think that's all I've got.
That's good. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Does anybody have thoughts or suggestions on that before we move on? No?
Lots of information, lots going on.
That is a lot of information. All right, who else has updates? Tom or Justin?
Tom is not here, so
Yeah.
Justin.
I feel deficient compared to Steve and the updates he provided. I don't have anything, but I'm more than happy to try to field any questions or take any questions back to GRU management that anybody has.
I have one question. It's a big scale question. Has GRU changed their thinking at all with the increase in natural gas prices? Is that, I mean, I know that you all are kind of locked in, to long-term planning, but have the conversations changed? Has any of the thinking changed?
I mean, thinking changes on a day-to-day basis. So I'm part of a morning call that reviews current fuel prices across all the fuels that we use at GRU. And as natural gas prices have been increasing substantially, obviously since the conflict, the war in Ukraine, we've been, well, I say management's been trying to make decisions to burn those fuels which are economically favorable. Biomass has actually been pretty low on that list for a very long time now, and so we've been trying to maximize output from our renewable facility. But to, I guess, briefly answer that question, yes, that thinking is very dynamic and like I said, changes on a day-to-day basis in terms of which units are dispatched.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anybody else? Questions? All right. Our next item is to suggest items for the next meeting, which is August 15th. Steve, you have draft annual work plan. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I figured we could draft the work plan for 2022 before we lose staff that aren't on the committee anymore. So Megan, if you want, we can coordinate. I can send you the 2021 and that might be something we can bring back for any comments.
Yeah, sounds good.
Probably wouldn't. Here's my thought. One would be to identify what we've done for the year, but have then kind of draft what we want to do in the future. And I probably wouldn't finish that until we hear from the new committee members in September, and then they would add that discussion, that dynamic could get added to what we want to accomplish for 23. So I thought we could kind of finish up 22 and then identify goals for 23 in September. So kind of do half of the effort.
So is this the document that we have to do? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, it's the annual, it's pretty short, but it has,
That's because we didn't know that we had to do it and we did it real quick last time.
yes, yeah, that was with the change of liaison.
Yeah.
But each advisory committee puts together an annual report that you can either present it to a board or you can provide it in paper form. So we would either, we provide the copy to the Joint Water and Climate Policy Board and probably do a presentation in the end of the year on that item. So it would maybe just be a kickoff for that.
Yeah. Could you send that out to the committee and just make note of which are because there are certain components that we have to have that are required. Just so that everyone can be kind of thinking about it.
Yeah, so it requires you to identify your accomplishments and then your goals for the next year. So that the board, it's usually a county commission, but in this case, it's a joint commission, a board, they could comment on whether they feel like those goals are appropriate. They're not as concerned about the accomplishments unless they feel like something was missing, but they would be interested in seeing what those goals are. So that they hope that it lines up with what they're hoping you're doing. Those are the requirements.
Sounds good. I think that's a worthy agenda item.
Okay.
Anybody else have suggestions for August? I mean, we can make that kind of a working meeting, so if everyone just take a look at what was done last year. I'll see, you and I can like start it in terms of like what the accomplishments are and then send out a draft. And then use the next meeting really to think about goals.
And part of those goals might be to finish up some of the things that we kind of started. So it will, some of the accomplishments will have part two.
Yeah, I think it's actually really helpful for all the committee members to see it and that.
Right.
I mean, they understand what their expectations are too, as opposed to just maybe the chair or vice chair. Yep, so I'll send out. You want me to send out the 21?
Yeah, just so we have a
Just so
chance.
everyone sees it?
Yeah, just look at it. And I think, I mean, it'll also give us a chance to compare the goals that we stated to what our accomplishments have been. You know, did we do what we set out to do?
Yeah, and and looking at them, you guys are pretty close. So.
That's where you want to be.
Right.
All right.
So in terms of working, are you thinking virtual? Because you don't have to make a motion on that.
I think everybody likes virtual. I mean, it's, you can like sneak off and eat dinner, you know, between, that's nice. So, yeah, I mean, as long as you're fine with us not approving the minutes, I think that, I mean, that's my preference. That's what I've heard around the
Okay.
room.
My goal is that we approve the minutes before we provide the annual report in the end. of the
Because you
year.
want to
So-
make an accomplishment, approved minutes as a bullet. Yeah, I
But
understand.
yeah, we can do that.
Okay. All right, so meeting, the recap and the action item. Stevie's gonna send out that document, the work plan for the committee. Take a look. Be thinking if there are any accomplishments that you want to highlight, send them to Steve. And then be thinking about what goals you think we want to set as a committee going forward. And then the plan will be for the current cohort to discuss the goals and then basically have sort of a draft document put together. And then when our new members officially join, then to do the final touches, you know, to revise those goals and put it together, approve the minutes and send off the work plan. Am I missing any action items? All right,
It's the only one I have.
sounds good. Last up is public comment. I know we have several folks who have stuck around with us. Anybody have any comments? Or,
No.
Ellen, can I talk?
yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you. As a result of the Harold Wanless event on June 15th, where we had 205 people register in the space of 3 weeks, and just under 187 appeared on Zoom and in person. So it was pretty amazing turnout for a pretty slapped together unique opportunity. So there's something happening in the air about environmental groups coming together. So it started with Sue Blythe, Susan Nugent, Helen Warren, all people known to you and me. I'm your fly on the wall, gadfly on the wall for CCAC. And it's grown to 20 people on the steering committee now, with a bunch of activities planned for in various ways. So it's an in for the CCAC to reach not just enviro groups, but a lot of interfaith groups. There's a very, very strong interfaith connection here. And education groups through Sue Blythe. She's got a lot going with kids, with theater, and she's got some ideas for curriculum for schools. There's a lot of overlap. So you're not really ivory tower. You guys are amazing. I'm kind of spellbound by your collective intelligence and analytic ability, but you are, downtown. So I'm offering you a chance to get to know the Let's Talk Climate group. And I would be happy to send Stephen and Megan the schedule events that's already scheduled and invite you to consider coming, including we're going to have a climate action concert with the climate action concert organizer from California on September 7th. And the idea is to get people in the community to get off their butts and do something. So, you know, there'll be some fun. And we're going to have a movie night with Cinema Verde with Trish Riley. We're going to have a reverse tashlit, no Jewish people in the room, I don't think. At the high holidays, Jews on Rosh Hashanah take bread cubes and find a body of water and enumerate their sins and bad qualities that they'd like to get rid of in the coming new year. So it's called tashlit, and we're going to have a reverse tashlit where Jews, and we're making it an interfaith event, go and clean the sins out of the water. So we haven't found the waterway in town yet that needs cleaning, but you know, there'll be fun things, and that's something families can do. So keep your ears peeled and your eyes open for Let's Talk Climate stuff. And we appreciate any help and support that you want to give to us for that. And if there's any sources any of you know of for grant money, we don't have a 501c3 quite yet, may not do it, may work through Sue Bly's Climate Collaboratory, but we could sure use some seed money for funding things. I'm new to Gainesville and I've not ever done grant writing, so I'll take any leads anybody wants to give me. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ellen. And please do send the schedule to Steve. You can send it to me too, but Steve is the one who'll be able to send it out to the rest of the committee.
Will do.
Thank you. Anybody else? And and if anybody does know of funding, then I mean, that's also something maybe we should try to keep track of in terms of, you know, like empower, but also for our community groups. Just
Yeah. I was just gonna
That would
say,
be amazing.
Ellen, I don't know if you or other members of the committee are familiar with the Volo Foundation.
No.
It's based out of Miami, I believe, focused on climate community action. And I mean, they have a website. I'll drop in the chat. I think I
Thank
could
you.
do that. Yep.
Thank you.
Seems like they have a lot
Yeah.
of smaller
Yeah.
grants and funding.
I have a lot of
opportunities.
superpowers, but that's not one of them.
I think that actually could be really useful. I don't know if that's part of like even for the dashboard or something, but we have so many active community organizations who are doing really valuable work, and it's something where it doesn't really require anything of the city or county except to kind of maintain the site and then let these community groups do the thing that they're already really good at and they're already doing, but provide sort of access to, hey, here's a list of organizations that are funding climate related or environmental related initiatives, so that there's kind of a one-stop shop when people have a really good idea and they're just missing the money.
Yeah, it's great. Great suggestion.
All right. With that, are there any final comments from the committee? No. All right. Our next meeting is going to be August 15th. It looks like we are going to be going virtual, 100% virtual again, except for Steve, who's going to be here. If anybody wants to show up in person. But until then, see you later, everyone. Good night.